Okay, section B then. So please do remember there is a section B. Some people just don't bother to turn the next page of the booklet and they're like, oh, we didn't realise there was a writing section. There is a writing section, okay? It is 1 hour long. You should spend 1 hour on it anyway. It's up to you to move from the reading to the writing section at the right time. And you absolutely must keep an eye on the timings of this language exam, okay? And stick to the 3 sections of 20 minutes. Then make sure that you are moving on after an hour to the writing section. So it says answer question 2.1 and 2.2. It's not a pick whatever one you like the look of, it's answer both. In this section, you will be assessed on the quality of your writing skills. For each question, 12 marks are awarded for communication and organisation, 8 marks for vocabulary, sentence structure, punctuation and spelling. So communication and organisation means the way you've structured and set it out, the way you've organised your text. So have you written in the correct form of, say, a letter or an article or a speech, as well as things like the deforest technique and the level of detail that you've put into your answers. And then those 8 marks are for things like spelling, punctuation, sentence structure and vocabulary. Think about the purpose and the audience. So why are you writing and who are you writing to? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You should aim to write about 300 to 400 words. You want to try to aim for about 2 sides of your exam booklet for each task. Okay, if you only write a page, you are going to struggle to get more than the bottom of a band 3. It is essential that you are writing enough and that you are going into enough detail about the main reasons that you give in support of whatever each of the questions is about. We spend 30 minutes on each of the questions. Okay, they're both worth exactly the same amount of marks, so we're going to spend exactly the same amount of time. Now, you could be asked, technically, to write in 6 different forms. We have a letter, an article, a speech, a review, the text from a leaflet, they tend to call it a guide, or a report. Now, I've written these in terms of frequency of them coming up. Letters and articles, I would have to double check to fact check myself here, but I'm pretty certain every year either a letter or an article have come up, or both. That's why I've chosen to do letters and articles today, because they come up the most frequently. Third most frequent is a speech. A review has come up twice, including last year. A guide has come up, I was looking through the exam papers earlier, a guide has come up once in the autumn papers, because if you have to retake your English language exam at college, you can retake it in sort of November time of college if you only need a little bit of work. And 1 year there was a guide on that one of those papers, and a report has never come up. Okay, so I would suggest, you focus your revision, at least for the first mock that you're going to be doing over half term, on these top ones. But obviously when you go into the real exam, we need to make sure that you can write in the form of all 6. So we can see here that we have a letter and we have an article, but I'm going to deal with one at a time. So I need to be thinking for each text, my form, my audience, my purpose. So I already know that my form is a letter. Let's find out my audience and purpose. The text below was part of an article in a teenage magazine. Okay, so there's my audience. My audience are teenagers. I'm fed up with reading about celebrities and sports stars behaving badly. They do no good and a lot of harm. The worst thing is that teenagers are easily influenced to think they can copy them and behave the same. Write a letter to the magazine giving your views on the subject. So what's my purpose? essentially to give my opinion. So I'm going to potentially argue/persuade. So my form is a letter, my audience are teenagers, it's a teenage magazine, and I need to give my opinion, and I'm essentially arguing or persuading them to sort of come around to my point of view. My topic is, do you think celebrities and sports stars are good role models for teenagers? Do you agree that they do no good and a lot of harm, that teenagers are easily influenced by them and, they're poor role models and will copy this bad behaviour? Or do you think that is an unfair statement? Now, most of these potential questions are going to be you giving your view, normally on a statement. It doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree or a bit of both. It really doesn't matter. You need to pick the arguments that you think you're going to be able to write the best about and in the most detail about. Because the single biggest issue that people face in this section, apart from forgetting to write in the correct form, is that they just don't have enough of an opinion to be able to really write enough. They run out of ideas. They run out of ideas to back up what they want to say. So pick whatever ideas you have that you think you're going to be able to write about in enough detail. So I would then have to think, okay, I've got 30 minutes. I want to spend a few minutes of that planning. Now, in an article, we've essentially got a title. We have intro, 3 main points, conclusion. Oh, to help if I could write the word conclusion. So an article is pretty simple. Now, for my 3 main points, I could potentially use subheadings. You do see that in some magazine articles, that for my 3 main points, I might have optional subheadings. It doesn't really matter for an article. You could have them, you could not have them. So fundamentally, I've got to plan my 3 main points. So if I was going to do this question, I've got to think, do I agree? Do I disagree? Okay, so I think I would have, point 1, agree. I might talk about, violence. I might talk about, sort of drugs, alcohol, abuse. I might talk, second one might be agree, because I might talk about getting on my feminist bandwagon. I might talk about objectification of women. I might talk about misogyny. I might talk about incel culture. And actually, a lot of celebrities are now influencers. So I think it's quite an interesting take on maybe if this was a question 5-6 years ago. Don't think we've sort of got this same idea of influencers as real celebrities themselves. People would typically think of celebrities like footballers, actors, musicians. Obviously, a lot of our celebrities can be online personalities. So I think I might talk a little bit, again, my opinion, you might completely and utterly disagree, and yours answer might look very different to mine. But I'm just thinking, if someone sat down and said, Mrs. Chillingworth, you've got to write this question, this is probably what I would say. And I think my third point would be disagree. Some celebrities are brilliant role models. I'm not one to massively follow football, but I think what Marcus Rashford did during COVID was amazing, campaigning for free school meals. And he's an example of a celebrity that really, really used their influence for good. So I might think of some examples of, celebrities that actually are really, really good role models. He's a really brilliant role model for young boys as well. He's done some books, really targeted at sort of building up sort of younger boys as well. And I might think of, a couple of other examples of celebrities that are really brilliant role models as well. So that's largely going to be my 3 main points. Now, once I've got my 3 main points, I essentially need to start writing following this structure. But the one thing that I haven't mentioned yet are our DeForest techniques. Now, ideally, we need to make sure that we are using the DeForest techniques. Handily, I have literally just done this with my Year 9s. So I've got them up here. We can see we've got direct address, saying you, we, us, talking to your audience, alliteration, 2 or more words beginning with the same letter, facts, things that can be proven to be true, opinion, just what you think, or it might be the opinion of others, rhetorical question, questions asked for deliberate effect to make you think, repetition, repeating the same word, phrase, idea, emotive language, any words trying to inspire an emotion, exaggeration, being over the top, statistics, that's basically like sort of justifying facts through numbers, through data, imaginary surveys. Generally with statistics, you're going to make those up. And then triples or triplets or rule of 3 can be 3 sort of similar words, synonyms that are repeated, sort of lists of 3s, things like that. So we need to make sure that I'm following the correct structure. I'm going into lots of nice detail about my 3 main reasons, and that I'm using the DeForest techniques throughout. So we can apply a lot of that to question 2 as well, because it's exactly the same approach, but we'll just have a little going through that too. So I'm going to imagine I've written for 30 minutes now. I've got to do exactly the same thing for question 2. A teenage magazine. So here we are. We're writing a teenage magazine, has invited readers to write articles on topics that people have strong views about. The latest topic is tattoos. Are they just harmless fun and fashion, or something to regret in later life? You decide to write an article on the topic for the teenage magazine, giving your views. I've just realised I've totally got these muddled up. I do apologise. It is the last day of term, which is possibly not the best time to be doing this. So I'm just quickly swapping it around because I've realised I've just talked you through an article. So let's imagine that one was an article. This one was a letter. So form, letter, audience, teenage magazine. Purpose, again, giving your views. So it's going to be very similar to this. I'm arguing, persuading about tattoos. Now, do you think tattoos are a good thing? It's a way of self-expression. Or do you think actually, tattoos are a negative thing? There's something to regret. So once I've highlighted my keywords and I've got a real key sense of my audience and my purpose, again, I need to plan my 3 main ideas. Now, I'm not going to go through that again because I'd follow exactly the same idea as this. I'm going to think and I'm going to plan my 3 main points. What we do need to talk a little bit about, though, is a letter. So, letter is probably one of the more complicated structures to remember. So we start off here with an address. So that address might be, 17 Wish Street, just making up an address, Rye, East Sussex, TN31 7BX, for argument's sake. Now, it could be your address, it could be a made-up address, it doesn't matter, but you need to know how to set out an address. I would then write today's date, which is the 24th of October, and over here, I'm going to want to write the address to the people I'm writing to. So if it's a teenage magazine, I've got to probably make up a title, Teen View magazine, not massively imaginative, but it does the job. 21 London Road, Hastings, East Sussex, TN247NB. So it's probably a good idea to think of a made up address to some sort of newspaper or magazine, because they tend to like this sort of question a lot when it comes to writing a letter. There's been such and such statement in their magazine or newspaper, write a letter giving your views. So it's probably worth having a bit of a made up address, maybe going to the exam with. So once I've got my address, date, address of the person I'm sending to, I need my greeting. Now that's going to either be Dear Sir/Madam or Dear whoever, if I know their name. Now, if it's the type of question like write a letter to your head teacher, then you're going to be expected to know your head teacher's name. Most of the time, they tend to be writing to a magazine or a newspaper. So it might be Dear Sir/Madam. So it's really important that you make sure that whatever one comes up, whether it is writing to someone you know, someone you don't know, that you get that right. The next thing that we need to make sure that we do is have an introduction. Okay, so we need to have an introduction, and that is going to essentially be why you are writing. So I am writing to you today to express my views on whatever it is, okay, on tattoos. Then I need my first point. I need my second point. I need my third point. And then I need my conclusion / sort of action paragraph. Now, my conclusion or my action paragraph is essentially going to be, what do you want to happen as a result of the letter, being read or the letter being published? Is it that you want them to publish your letter because you want to offer a different point of view? Is it because you want to is it because you want them to change the mind of the original person that wrote? So there's some sort of action paragraph. So then we have, finally, our formal sort of closing or goodbye, if you like. And that's either going to be yours faithfully or yours sincerely. Now, I have a complete mental block when it comes to whether to use faithfully or sincerely. So I think it's really important that you find a way to remember it. For example, I am literally just fact checking myself on my phone to make sure that I'm telling you the right thing, because I just have a mental block. So try, if your brain can be a little bit like mine, make sure that you find a way to remember. For example, in a letter, if you know their name, it's yours sincerely. Okay, so if I'd done Dear Mr. Downs, I'd want to close it with yours sincerely. If I've done Dear Sir/Madam, I want to do it with yours faithfully. It's not the end of the world if you muck it up. It's not really going to cost you any marks, particularly, at least not unless you're right at the top end. But it's good to try and be as accurate as possible. So again, I would use my planning and I would write it out. But I'm also making sure that I'm trying to use the De Forest techniques throughout. So I hope this video has been useful. It's a straightforward exam, the language exams on the whole, but there's a lot to remember in terms of technique. Generally having a go at practice, and I'm sure your English teachers have given you practice exam papers to do. You could always have a go at actually doing these questions if they haven't, although I'm sure they have. You could pause the video and actually practice writing these out. For the language exam, the only real revision you can do is that actual exam practice. Okay, so I hope that